So today our speaker is Mr. Nozomu Sonda, and he will be speaking on a Baha'i perspective on East Asian religions, Shinto, Buddhism, and Confucianism. Nozomu Sonda is from Japan and lives in Yamaguchi with his American wife, Ava, who he met at Maxwell International School, a Baha'i-inspired school in Canada. He's an English instructor and translator-interpreter and teaches at various colleges and universities in Japan. He used to live in the United States, where he was a high school exchange student in Kansas, and later studied psychology at Kansas State University and the University of Kansas. Nozomu Sonda currently serves on the National Spiritual Assembly of the Bahá'ís of Japan, the democratically elected governing body for the Bahá'ís of Japan. And with that, I'll hand it off to Mr. Sonda.
Thank you very much. Well, greetings to you all. And I don't know what to say, though. Good morning or good afternoon or good evening. For me, it's 1 o'clock in the morning. So, but I heard that the friends, participants are from all over the world. And I have never given a talk at 1 a.m. in the morning because usually there's no audience. So that was the only worry I had. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about East Asian religions, Shinto, Buddhism, and Confucianism from a Baha'i perspective. So let me share the slides on the screen. Okay. Just a minute. Okay, from the beginning. Okay. Now, first, we're going to watch a short video clip.
(1876). Day unknown, month unknown. I continue to live among these unusual people. I am their captive, and then I cannot escape. Mostly I'm treated with a kind of a mild neglect, as if I were a stray dog or an unwelcome guest. Everyone is polite. Everyone smiles and bows. But beneath their courtesy, I detect a deep reservoir of feeling.
Again.
They are an intriguing people. From the moment they wake, they devote themselves to the perfection of whatever they pursue. I have never seen such discipline. I am surprised to learn that the word samurai means to serve, and that Katsumoto believes his rebellion to be in the service of the emperor.
Okay, so that was a movie, Last Samurai, and the reason I showed this clip is to explain to you that Bushido really manifests the Japanese spirit. And this book was written by Inazo Nitobe, and he was, of course, Japanese from late 19th century to early 20th century. He became a Christian as a young man, in fact, a Quaker, and his wife was also Quaker, an American wife. And he later became vice secretary to the League of Nations, Secretary General of League of Nations. And his friends, his wife and his friends asked him question, like in Christianity, like in the Western countries, the source of moral education is the Bible. And what's the source of moral education in Japan? And he had to think. And he said, I'll get back to you shortly. And then he actually ended up writing a book, which is Bushido, this book. So it's originally written in English. And in this book, he says there are three sources of moral education for Japanese people: Shinto, Buddhism, and Confucianism. And that's why I chose these three religions as the topic of today's presentation. Before we go into details of these religions, let us look at this graph. So this is published by Japanese government, White Book on Religion, 2019, and shows the number of believers of major religions in Japan. So as you can see, Buddhists and Shintoists about the same number, 85 million or so. Okay, and then relatively few Christians and lots of many miscellaneous religious organizations, believers, including Baha'is. However, there are a few interesting features to this graph. First of all, there's no Confucianists. Well, I just said Confucianism is one of the three major religions or sources of moral education in Japan, but there are no Confucianists. Second aspect, you can't really see unless you know Japanese demography. If you combine Buddhists and Shintoists, you get about 170 million. This is actually far more than the total population of Japan. So population of Japan is 126 million, and total number of believers is 181 million. So something is very wrong. Is the government lying? There's no point in lying, but something wrong with the counting. So I get back to that later.
The Japanese man.
Oh, okay. Now this graph is from the survey conducted by NHK, the National Television Network of Japan. And this is numbers indicate the percentage of the responses to the question, what religion do you believe in? And about 1,500 people were asked, the random selection. And 31% of people said Buddhists, and 3% Shintoists, and no religion, 62%. As far as I'm concerned, this is more like the reality, like my friends would answer about in this proportion. So going back to this graph, the first graph, this is only a result of the difference in the definition of believers. So the Japanese government did the survey according to the traditional, what we call the maybe equivalent to Christian church parishes. So traditionally, everybody belonged to some Buddhist parish. And so, for example, I'm a Baha'i. My mother is also a Baha'i, but then we have a Buddhist altar at home. And this Buddhist altar comes from the temple our house or family belongs to. So if you belong to a certain temple, Buddhist temple, then the government counts everybody in that household as Buddhists. In the same way, the Japanese family belongs to some Shinto parish, and then so they're associated with the Shinto shrines. And therefore, I am also counted as a Shintoist, as well as a Buddhist, and also a Baha'i. So I'm counted 3 times in this survey. That's why we have more believers than the total Japanese population. And of course, most of us don't realize, oh, I'm Buddhist, I didn't know that. Or I'm a Shintoist, oh, I didn't, that's the news. Okay, so this graph is really more realistic. About 30% of the people would say, yes, I am a Buddhist, like consciously. Like maybe they would read Buddhist writings and go to temple regularly and study Buddhist teachings. And Shinto is actually, very few people actually identify themselves as Shintoists. And I get to that point later again. So now let us look at the each religion. Oh, okay. Actually, this is the largest. This is full screen, so I cannot make it bigger than this one. Okay. So Shinto actually means way of kami. Kami means roughly equivalent to English God. This is actually a folk belief based on animism. And there is no founder, no scriptures, and it was only systematized and organized after Buddhism was introduced to Japan in the 6th century. And Buddhism had already developed its highly sophisticated philosophical system of teachings. So when Buddhism was introduced, the Japanese leaders felt threatened. So they quickly decided to organize their indigenous belief. And they didn't even have a name. So they had to come up with a name. So we believe in kami. So this is the way of kami. And then Buddhism is a way of the Buddha. And so that's how they identify themselves. They collected mythologies and compiled them into 2 books called Kojiki and Nihon Shoki. And the Shinto stresses of patriotism, loyalty and obedience, and loyalty to the sovereign, and reverence for ancestors, and emphasizes filial piety for example, parents. And there's a lack of dogma of original sin, as taught in, say, Christianity. They believe in innate goodness and godlike purity of human beings. The human heart is like a mirror, which, when perfected, placid and clear, reflects the very image of the deity. So I just show you some images. So this picture shows the family is worshiping nature and thanking nature and ancestors. We are very thankful for all this food and the fruits and the berries we could gather and collect. And we thank nature and we thank the mother nature, so on and so forth. Okay. So there is actually no sophisticated philosophical system So it's very simple set of teachings. This is a gate to the Shinto shrine. So many people go to shrine to pray for their well-being, success, birth, marriage, healing. Sometimes the torii gate is built in the ocean, like this. Okay, now Buddhism. Of course, Buddhism was founded by the Buddha, or Gautama Siddhartha, in the 5th century before Common Era in India. About 100 years after his passing, it is split into Hinayana and Mahayana sects. The latter spread to China, Korea, and Japan eventually. And Buddha taught many things very logically, and he taught that there are cause and effects in life. Everything is interrelated, and there are major sufferings in life which can be ended through the Eightfold Noble Path. So Buddhism taught a sense of calm trust in fate, a quiet submission to the inevitable, stoic composure in sight of danger or calamity, disdain of life, and friendliness with death. And Zen represents human effort to reach through meditation zones of thought beyond the range of verbal expression. Lafcadio is actually a British writer who became naturalized in Japan in the 19th century. Oops. So actually the Buddhism over the 1,000 and 2,000 years developed and changed, and all these statues were built, although idol worshipping was prohibited in the original teaching. This is a big Buddha in Kamakura, Japan. You can see the house behind the statue, so you can see how big it is. Now, Confucianism was taught by Confucius. Actually, Confucius was contemporary of the Buddha, but the Confucius was living in China, so they didn't really meet each other. Confucianism is actually not categorized as a religion, scholastically speaking, and rather it is considered as a moral value system or ethical value system. And he taught many ethical things, like this is 5 virtues of Confucianism: benevolence, rectitude, courtesy, knowledge, trustworthiness. And Confucianism became the source of ethics for Japanese people. For example, 5 moral relations, like between master and servant, father and son, husband and wife, older and younger, brother and friend, and there has to be order and courtesy in between these people. And the writings, Confucius writings, became the principal textbooks for youth and the highest authority for the old. And they emphasized action. Just knowing something is not enough. You have to put that knowledge into action. So some images from Confucianism. So over the centuries, these teachings and ideas and thoughts have shaped the Japanese mind, society, and culture. and they are combined with the specific climate and geography of Japan, resulting in a very unique mindset and value system. So if you look at the world map, you can see Japan is a from archipelago, separated from mainland China. The sea that separates the Japanese archipelago and China is called Japan Sea or China Sea, very wild sea. It was a life or death experience to cross that sea in the old days. So over the centuries, Japan formed this very unique language and culture, very distinct from Chinese language and culture. Okay. So this is the sea I was talking about. Of course, many millenniums ago, Japan was part of China. It was connected. And that's how people migrated from the west to east, or north to south, or from south to north to Japan. But at certain point, gradually, Japanese islands were separated from the mainland and became geographically isolated. So now I'm going to show you another video. This is an interview. So this YouTuber interviews Japanese young people on the street, asking what their religion is, what they think about religion.
Hey guys, it's Yuta. So many people ask me what religion I have when I'm abroad, so I asked the same question to Japanese people. Alright, check this out.
仏教です。仏教。
じゃあ仏教ってどんな宗教ですか？
南無阿弥陀仏。仏様。先祖。わかんない私も。何を信じてる？
じゃあキリスト教だったら普通に神を信じてるじゃないですか。仏じゃあ信じてますか？
信じてないです。
じゃあ仏教徒として自分は何をしてますか、具体的に？
何もしてないな。
それなのに仏教徒と思う理由は何でしょう？
仏壇があるから。無宗教です。なんか家自体は仏教っていうか浄土真宗らしいんですけど、何も関係ない。姉妹なんで。
あんまり似てないですね。
お葬式とかはやっぱりそういう浄土真宗とか決まってるから行ってその唱えるのとかはなんとなくわかるんですけど、仏教としては全く何も興味ない。
宗教ないです。
ないです。
宗教自体についてよく分かってないからです。
なんかおばあちゃんとか自分の親とかってどうですか？
いや、特に宗教には入ってないですね。仏壇はありますね。あります。
無宗教です。
ない。何もないです。
だから
クリスマスあってな、盆があって正月あって。
盆があって正月があってバレンタインも祝っちゃうし。
エイプリルフールもちゃんとやるしな。
ちゃんとやるしな。
あれは関係ないかな。ハロウィンもやっちゃうしな。
ハロウィンもやっちゃうし。
お寺とか神社に行くことってありますか？
なんか出雲大社とかそういう観光地とかやったら行くかもしれない。
そうか。正月は行くね。地元の神社。
Okay.
Sorry?
Oops. So this video clips really shows the typical attitude of Japanese people, especially young people, towards religion. And as you can see, none of them said they really believe in any religion. Maybe the first couple people said Buddhism, but they didn't really know what Buddhism was. And that's really shows the typical Japanese people attitudes towards religion, and really explains the second bar graph I showed. 60% of the people said they have no religion. And in fact, I was just like them when I was much younger, say through junior high or even senior high school age. And I might have answered to the question just like they did. And I'm pretty sure the YouTuber interviewed these people randomly, talking to the people on the street, and they gave like a typical answers to the question, and they give the same answers. So basically the Buddhism is now 2,500 years old, and so is Confucianism, and Shintoism is even much older, and we don't know even the origin. And so over the 2 millenniums, they shaped Japanese mind and culture and thoughts, but then they changed, underwent changes, and then maybe misunderstood, misrepresented, even abused, and all kinds of other things were combined to form the current today's Japanese mind. And this slide shows you Isaiah Ben-Dasan's book called Japanese and the Jews. In this book, the author gives a name to the Japanese religion. It says Nihon-kyo, or Nipponism. Nihon-kyo is a quote-unquote religion of Japanese people, but it is a religion that no one is aware of. It is a mixture of many teachings, values, and ideas cultivated over many centuries. And this book is actually quite interesting. The author is actually a Japanese person. He just used a Jewish pen name to catch the attention of the public. He wrote it in Japanese originally, by the way. And this is just the English translation on the right. So left is the original Japanese. Oops. And he just compares the two peoples, Japanese and Jews, being very similar. And of course, for Japanese, it is news. What's the similarity? Because Jewish people are very religious and Japanese people are not. But the author explains that Japan has its own religion called Nihon-kyo, but they don't know it because it's all unconscious. Now, part 2 begins. The reason I talk about this Nihon-kyo idea is that, like I said, I was also an unconscious believer of Nihon-kyo. I didn't know what I believed in, but then unconsciously I had Buddhist idea, Shintoist idea, and Confucianist idea, and other ideas all mixed up. And then that's when I was 19, I encountered the Baha'i faith. And I came to know about the Baha'i faith through a young American Baha'i couple who was living in my hometown. So I met them in a social gathering, and after a month or so, they introduced me to the faith, Baha'i faith. And then one day, they started to explain the Baha'i teachings like this. The first principle is independent investigation of truth. And immediately I was attracted, like, that sounds good, because my parents always tell me what to do and how to do, and I was very annoyed. Even teachers tell me what to do and what not to do. And the Baha'i faith emphasized, you have to study for yourself, you have to think for yourself, you have to choose your faith for yourself. So in fact, they told me that Baha'i parents have to teach their children not only about the Baha'i faith, but the other religions and history of religion, and then let them decide when they become 15 years of age. And I thought, wow, that sounds great. Count me in. I just said to myself, I didn't say that out loud. Then they said that God is one. Whatever you call them, call God. Kami or Allah or Jehovah or Tien or whatever. there's one God, one creator. But then they also said that, but God is unknowable. And I like this idea so much. God is unknowable. Because if you know God, then maybe it's not God. Maybe it's like human being, because you can understand. They explained that if the God is creator, then we are the created. How can the created know the creator? How can the paintings understand the mind of painter? How can the desk understand the mind of the carpenter? So this all makes sense. Sounds good. And then they said, because we can't understand God directly, that's why God sends his prophets or manifestations of God we call in the Baha'i faith, such as Moses, Christ, Muhammad, Buddha, Zoroaster, and then now the Bab and Baha'u'llah, and then there will be more in the future. So therefore, the prophets are also one in essence, one in purpose, and the religions they taught are also one in essence. But religions are taught in accordance to the requirements of the time and place they were revealed. That's why they were different in some aspects, especially what they call the material or social aspects of the teachings. So this also made sense to me. Wow, this is like very logical religion. And finally, of course, humanity is created by God. Also, therefore, humanity is also one. We are just different because we moved to different parts of the world and lived in different conditions. And in fact, the differences add to the beauty of the human family. So it's not the cause of problems, it's the cause of harmony, unity, and appreciation of each other. And then they went on with other teachings like international language, global governance, equality of women and men, economic justice and equity. So this all made sense, and in fact, I agreed with every single teaching they introduced me. And I thought, oh, if I were to have a religion, I would believe in this religion. I was thinking to myself. And then they asked me, so would you like to become a Baha'i? And what do you think I said? No. I was supposed to say yes, right? But then I said no immediately, without hesitation. So you might wonder why. Are you schizophrenic? You have split mind? And maybe I did. And I had reason, actually. In my mind, the teachings, yes, I agree. Organization, no thank you. That was the thinking. And I believed sincerely that the Baha'i teachings were good, true, and then I thought the Baha'i friends were wonderful, very nice people, so teachings must be also good. But in terms of organization, I'm not sure, because according to the history of religion always split into sects, fight, and then money, and then politics come into play, and then the organization become corrupt. So I didn't want to have anything to do with it. I didn't really say this to them. I just thought in my mind, like intuitively, immediately I was thinking like this. So I just said, no, thank you, but I'd like to hang around if you don't mind. So that was my response. So I had, like, on one hand, I started to think about Baha'i faith as like part of my life, but then I also had my own philosophy, life philosophy. So I had like a mixture. I already had a mixture of ideas, right? Buddhism, Confucianism, and Shintoist, and other cultural customs and habits. And now I have the Baha'i faith, and I got all mixed up. And then several months later, I had a big personal test, and I couldn't solve it. and I really didn't know what to do. It was like about the life direction kind of a thing. I was only 19 years old, just graduated from high school and moving on to college. And then I remembered what my Baha'i teachers told me. Religion is like a manual for life. If you have problems, you consult the manual and then you fix them. Also, if you want to prevent problems like this one, you should study the manual and then prevent them. Then I realized, oh, that's right. I don't know anything. I don't really know what to do with my own life. And I told them that I knew, no thanks, I know what to do with my life. I just mix everything, you know, Baha'i teachings, my own philosophy, and then I'll be fine. That's what I told them, but then I wasn't fine. So I had to admit my defeat. I didn't tell them, I just said to myself. So I decided to jump into the ocean of Baha'i teachings because I don't know. I realized I didn't really know anything about my life, what to do. So that's how I became a Baha'i when I was 19 years old. Then after I became Baha'i, I started to ask these 3 questions. These are recurring questions, like kind of reminder to myself, like, why did I become a Baha'i? What am I supposed to do as a Baha'i? And what will I do when the next manifestation of God comes? So the first question, answer to the first question was actually very easy. I was attracted to the Baha'i teaching that the purpose of life is to acquire virtues. That's what Abdu'l-Baha said, the son of Baha'u'llah, the founder of the Baha'i Faith, said in Paris Talks, to acquire virtues. And this idea of virtues was not new to me. Like Bushido taught virtues like this: rectitude, courage, benevolence, politeness, veracity, honor, loyalty, self-control. So anyone who possessed these virtues were the typical Japanese heroes or heroines in the stories and history. And Baha'u'llah also emphasized there are so many virtues listed in the Baha'i writings. For example, in the gleanings from the writings of Baha'u'llah, he says, it is a few virtues. Equity is the most fundamental among human virtues. Those virtues that befit his dignity are forbearance, mercy, compassion, and loving kindness towards all the peoples and kindreds of the earth. Among them are trustworthiness, truthfulness, purity of heart while communing with God, forbearance, resignation to whatever the Almighty has decreed, contentment with the things His will has provided, patience, nay, thankfulness in the midst of tribulation, and complete reliance in all circumstances upon Him. So acquiring virtues means to be a good person, basically, simply stated. And anybody can understand this language. Why did you become a Baha'i? Oh, I wanted to become a good person. And if my parents asked why I became Baha'i, I would say this: I want to be a better person. And I don't know that's why, but then my mother also became a Baha'i only a month later. Second question. Oh, actually, there's a second dimension to the first question. Why I became Baha'i? Baha'i teachings also give another purpose of life, which is, in this quotation, Baha'u'llah says, all men have been created to carry forward an ever-advancing civilization. And this one was really my favorite, because it wasn't just about you as a person, but it was also about the world, society. And you have to serve other people, serve your community, and build a civilization. That means you have to go to school and work and do good things. So that gave me really a sense of direction, not just internally, but also externally. So I was just starting college, so that gave me inspiration and encouragement to pursue my studies with more motivation. And second question was, what does it mean to be a Baha'i? Of course, this is related to the answer to the first question. It's personal growth and contributing to social development. And so Baha'i community is engaged in many activities related to community building, such as children's class. And believe or not, when I first became a Baha'i, and then 1 year later, actually 1 month later, I moved to America. And then, the first task the local spiritual assembly of that community gave me was children's class teacher. I had no experience. I don't know why they trusted me, because I had no younger brothers or sisters. I was horrible with children, but then somehow they said, Nozomu, we want you to become a children's class teacher. Here's the book, and please go to the classroom next Sunday at such and such place. And then I was actually very happy to receive this instruction, and I did very well. Surprisingly, it was a miracle in my life. And then I gained confidence. I could do this. Other activities, a junior youth empowerment program. Junior youth are the age group of 10 to 14. They are not children anymore, but they are more like, they are not adults yet. They are in between. So they require special attention. And then there are administrative activities to take care of the affairs of the community needs. So all these things gave me things to do, and it gave me the very good balance between personal growth pursuits and service for the community or the society. And actually these two things go together. They are not separable. And that's one of the greatest lessons I learned from the Baha'i teachings. The self and the society, individual and society, they go together in this age especially, because they influence each other. No person can live alone. And this current pandemic is a perfect example. Everywhere you go, people wearing masks and people talking about viruses and talking about the same thing. So that's another lesson I learned. And then the third question is very strange. You might think, what should you do? Should I do when the next manifestation comes? Because according to Baha'u'llah, the next manifestation or prophet of God would not come until at least 1,000 years will have elapsed from his time. So I don't have to worry about it for another 800 years. But I was already thinking about it, because 800 years later, I would have to be able to recognize the next manifestation. So what does that mean? That means I have to be humble. I have to maintain the same humbleness. When I became Baha'i, I admitted my defeat. I didn't know anything. And so it's a process. Being a Baha'i is a process, and we have to recognize that there's always learning. Okay. So our time is running out. So I'm going to conclude this presentation. I'm going back to Bushido. I showed you a short video clip. So the author of Bushido, the book Bushido, wrote, it has been predicted that the moral system of feudal Japan, its castles and armories, will crumble into dust. A new ethics rise phoenix-like to lead New Japan in her path of progress. So he wrote this book back in early 20th century, like 100 years ago. So what is this new ethics? And then the same author wrote, Bushido as an independent code of ethics may vanish, but its power will not perish from the earth. Its schools of martial prowess or civic honor may be demolished, but its lights and its glory will long survive their ruins. It will enrich life. And I do believe this, because although today's Japanese people have very mixed ideas about religion, even misrepresented ideas about religion, still the spirit of Bushido, or spirit of Buddhism, Shinto, and Confucianism is living in people's hearts, just like it was in my own when I was searching. And I think the Baha'i faith has a key to answer this question. And in fact, there is another quotation. It has been predicted that the moral system of feudal Japan castles, I read this earlier, sorry. So there's a prophecy in the Baha'i teachings. Japan will turn ablaze. Japan with another country. He did not reveal what country, but he said with another country, Japan will lead the peoples and nations of the world to a spiritual reawakening, and Japan will turn ablaze. So I think Baha'i faith, to me, holds the key to the spiritual reawakening of the Japanese people. And although the Confucianism, Shintoism, and Buddhism have undergone many changes, the fundamental spirit still lives in the Japanese mind and culture. And I hope that people will find what they're looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. That was honestly really interesting. It was really interesting to hear how those values and, you know, teachings and virtues from East Asian religions kind of translated to your Baha'i identity. So now if there's any questions, we'd love to have like a short Q&A session. You can either put your question in the chat and I'll read it in order, or you can raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand function, which you can find by clicking participants at the bottom, and then the raise hand button is in blue. So go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sonda. That was so fantastic and instructive speech. I really get a lot of information which I didn't have a chance to know about it before. That is to me relationship and friendship between my area and Japan and through media. Thank you very much for that. My question is regarding the children classes. Based on my information, compared to other countries, Japan is one of the best countries about the education for children. And you told me when you have experience with the Baha'i children classes, that was also interesting for you. I want to ask you, what was the difference? What was the point that make you very attracted about the children classes compared to your country? Is very famous in the world about education for children, but still when you were in the Baha'i children classes, that was interested for you, and I'd like to know what was the difference, how you get involved with that. Thank you very much.
Yes, I think in Japan, the primary school education, primary level, is regarded highly in the world, and I agree. There's good discipline. For example, every day after school, all the students have to clean their classrooms, and sometimes the entire school buildings. And of course, bowing to teachers and bowing to each other. Before eating lunch, they have to say very short phrase, bowing, and all those things. And as a child, I didn't really appreciate too much. It was kind of cumbersome to clean up the classroom every day. But when I left Japan for America for first time, and then I started to appreciate my early childhood education in Japan. But then when I first started to give the Baha'i children's class, then there was a fundamental difference. Baha'i children's class goes much deeper into soul. We talk about the level of soul and spirit, not just mind, not just custom. So the elementary school education I received in Japan was very good, but it was more surface level to me. They taught morality, yes, but they didn't really give very good, deep reasons. It wasn't that persuasive, but we just have to do it. We just have to bow to teachers, bow to such and such people, and do this and do that. So it was very orderly society, very nice, yes, very relatively few crimes, but then there's a lack of something deeper. And that's why I became very frustrated, even discontented with Japan as a young man, high school student. That's why we decided to go to America and see what's up, what's there. And so I do appreciate some of the things, many things from Japanese culture now as an adult. But then I think the fundamental reason I became dissatisfied was the lack of deep spiritual education. And there's moral training, yes. There's ethical training, yes. But there was no spiritual education. Nobody talked about soul. Nobody talked about spirit. Nobody talked about life after death, purpose of life in relation to the next life, and the relationship between spiritual education and material education. But Baha'i children's classes teach these things. And then prayers, prayers were taught, and the children are encouraged to memorize them. And that was a fun part for me. I also liked memorizing prayers. And so that was powerful experience. So that's my answer.
Great. Our next question is from Raju, so please go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Nozomu. Firstly, thank you for the talk. I had a question similar to the lady before me, because, you know, I love to travel, and nowhere in the world have I seen people so polite as in Japan. You know, the next place is probably Malaysia. I asked somebody in Malaysia, you know, how come everybody is polite to me? You know, even when I go out of a store, after spending 1 hour not buying anything, they will thank you, have a good day. It never happens, you know, in most other places, and definitely not here. I'm from Dubai. And in Malaysia, they said, you know, because it's a tourist country, they teach you to be kind to tourists, you know, and to be polite to them. And obviously, there's a tipping culture in the US where also the service is very good. But in Japan, there's no tipping culture, so you don't give any money to people to serve. And all over the country, everybody is super polite. So I was also thinking, what are they teaching them in school that every human being is super polite, you know? It was just the most unbelievable experience I had in Japan compared to any other country in the world. like you said, you know, that you did touch upon an important spot that they do teach politeness and moral education, which is so important, but they don't go that other level. So is that, do you think, you know, on one hand, I was thinking the next level of education for any country or any school would be, you know, similar to the Japanese, because they are not religious, like you said, 62%, and still they are super nice, you know, in every way. So then wouldn't the mix of the moral education and the spiritual of the soul would be something wonderful, you know, as the next step into education? And that's why you're a natural when you went to teach the children, because you already got a really good education from the moral part of it, at least, you know, and the spiritual part.
Yes, of course there are impolite people in Japan too. I'm sure we're talking about on the average. I didn't realize how polite Japanese people were until I left Japan. I just thought Japanese were not so polite when I first left Japan. But then I realized, yeah, I guess it's true. Well, the training comes from early childhood and based on, yes, Confucianism and Shinto, I think. Confucianism especially taught politeness, you know, orderliness in human relationships. And so, but of course, it's been 2,000 years since, almost 2,000 years since Confucianism was brought to Japan. And so sometimes spirit is lost and people just do it, you know, out of custom. But many people still also believe in the value of politeness sincerely. And it's true that there is no tipping service in Japan. People just do it out of sincerity. And then so the stores, businesses which provide, really show the spirit of service sincerely to the customers prosper. Actually, they know the key to true success in business. It's the selfless service to customers, you know, not just money seeking. That's really deeply embedded in Japanese culture. But again, not everybody is aware of this original teaching. So that's where the Baha'i teaching come into play to revive this, you know, spirit of service, the true root of politeness and courtesy will be stimulated and realized, and even made more perfect.
Our next question is from Ricardo.
Hello, good evening, and thank you for the presentation and the speech. That was really, really interesting. To go off of what Raju was asking, I wanted to get your thoughts on why the Baha'i faith may not be as popular, as taking off in Japan as you know you would like it to be. One thing that I have heard, and I haven't been to Japan, but from like my own research and from, you know, talking with people that have been to Japan, you know, exactly what Raju is saying. They come back and they're saying just like the fondest things about the country, and then the people of the country, saying it's super welcoming and warm. But one thing that they always tell me is that when the thing with Japan is that Japan loves tourists, they love foreigners coming to visit, and they love treating them with, you know, in a very welcoming way, but they're not the biggest fans. And again, this isn't, you know, my personal point of view, but like just from what I understand, they're not in general speaking, they're not the fondest of people kind of staying in Japan, you know, especially, you know, them being an island, you know, nation in Asia. They want to keep that. They're a very prideful group of people, and they want to keep, you know, Japan to its really like their roots and stuff like that. They're not the biggest, you know, fans of of foreigners coming living there to stay and to really integrate with the population there. And whether that's true or not, or just a generality, I wanted to see, would you think that may be a possibility of why, Shintoism is just like, or why any religion will struggle to kind of grow there, because even if they're not believers, it's still like Shintoism is still like, that's a Japanese thing, that's what they're known for. They're not super like, they have to keep it close because that's that's what they're known, like that's what they have in Japan. And they don't want, even though they may be they're open to other things, they still want to keep it a Japanese thing, so they wouldn't be as open. So I want to see if do you think that's a reason on why the Baha'i faith and other beliefs may struggle to grow in Japan?
Yes, fundamentally, I think yes, that's the main reason. Yeah, so that's actually the greatest challenge of Japan today, I think. So remember I mentioned the name Nihon-kyo or Nipponism. It's the today's unconscious religious system of Japan. It's not really a religion, but it's the value system. And there are all kinds of misunderstandings and misrepresentations, but people just believe in that as the unshakable foundation of Japaneseness. And so often people say to foreign Baha'i friends living in Japan for a long time, they say to them that, oh, you can be a Baha'i because you're a foreigner, but I'm Japanese, I can't. And so that's very interesting comment. And so what's going on is impossible. They're saying it's impossible for Japanese to accept anything un-Japanese coming from outside Japan. But then again, this is the weakness of Nihon-kyo idea, because Buddhism and Confucianism were not Japanese, indigenous Japanese religions. They came from outside. They became Japanized and then became part of Japan. And also they have this very strange belief that Japanese is a pure race. There's no such a thing as pure Japanese race. We know from scientific studies that Japanese people came from direction of Mongolia to China to Korea and Japan, or Polynesia, the southern part, to Kyushu, southern part of Japan, or from Europe and Siberia and down to Hokkaido, northern part of Japan. And they all came from Africa, probably. So we're all actually same people, but then originally, maybe talking about, say, 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 years ago, it were very mixed people, And then after the Japanese islands are separated from the mainland China, yes, we kind of maintained kind of intermarriages, so to speak, and formed more distinct Japanese people, but then originally we were not really pure race. So all these things have to be brought to light, and then people have to realize that all these are misunderstandings. Even the Japanese language is not pure. Like about 40% of Japanese vocabulary comes from Chinese words. So again, we are not alone. We can never be alone. We are always interdependent on each other. We borrow and help each other and form. So I think this is the challenge of the Japanese people at large to transform our consciousness. And when we realize this, then I think Japan will turn ablaze. Baha'i faith is not another religion. They will accept this as a truth, like natural part of themselves, nothing foreign. But I think your point is very important, and we've been thinking, talking and studying about it a lot these days. So thank you for your comment.
Okay, next we have a question from John, so please go ahead.
No, thank you. I lived 4 years in China recently, and I have close friends in Japan. They're not Baha'i, but I was thinking the other day, all my Baha'i books, a lot of them are by Baha'i writers about Jesus Christ or Muhammad. And then half of the world's population lives in the Far East. So what a change there will be when the Korean, Japanese, Thailand start writing these books too. Maybe they already are, and they just aren't sold much in America. But one other question I have, if you comment on that, is my friends in Japan like to talk about Taoism and Zen Buddhism, but you didn't mention those, so that's okay. Buddhism covers that, but I just wondered if you have anything to say about Taoism or Zen Buddhism.
Well, Taoism is in Japan too, but I think its elements are kind of scattered here and there throughout the Japanese culture and thinking. And like I said, Confucianism and Taoism are not considered strictly as religion. It's more like a moral, ethical system of thought. So it wasn't already mentioned here, but also it's not, we don't really talk about Taoism in our daily conversation either, but the elements are there, yes. Zen Buddhism, I didn't really go into it because it's really very special part of Japanese Buddhism. It's another story, maybe another talk. But my understanding is that the Zen Buddhism was developed during the in association with preparation for the coming of the next Buddha, like especially tea ceremony and flower arrangement, all these things came out of Zen Buddhism. And tea ceremony was also as a kind of ritual to prepare themselves for the coming of the next Buddha. But then it is another very deep topic, so I didn't really decide not to go into this at this time. Yes, but thank you for the questions.
Great. Well, I think in the interest of time, we'll close the questions there, but we want to thank you so much, especially for sacrificing and staying up till it's almost 2:30 a.m. there. So appreciate it, and we all learned so much. Such a unique perspective that we had. So next week, our speaker will be Dr. Habib Riazati, and he will be speaking on the challenge of our time, religious fundamentalism, fanaticism, and radicalism, a Baha'i perspective. And again, these talks are every Saturday at noon Eastern Daylight Time. And if you'd like to get on the mailing list, I've put my email address in the chat below, so please email me. So now we're going to close with a closing prayer.
Rely upon toil into utter peace. He verily, verily hath dominion over all things. He verily, verily hath dominion over all things.
Thank you everyone for joining, and we'll see you next week. Bye.